Hello, Greg. I am pumped. As we were just talking a few minutes ago, I could have just kept chatting with you for days, and it was like we were having a St. Patty's Day green beer on the patio. So I freaking love that. And I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to chat with me.
I appreciate you having me on here and thank you. I look forward to the chat for sure.
I'm very curious. You went to school back east, but you're a Vancouverite. Is that a thing? Did I get that
Vancouver,
right?
born and raised. Yep.
Okay, that's a thing. How the heck did all of this happen? So, what did you study at Acadia? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Because it seems like a very, like me, nonlinear
It's a
trajectory.
very, very nonlinear trajectory. How I ended up at Acadia in the first place was because I
Girl?
had no, not a girl.
It's
No,
always my first guess.
I wanted to find a university that forced me to be as far away from family as possible. And I thought that was an important part of the university process. And so learning all of the things that led to being on the opposite coast was helpful.
Mhm.
It was also one of the few, if not the only program that had a bachelor's in recreation management, which is what my degree is in.
Okay,
Um,
there's that
so
one I was looking for.
clearly real estate, right? Like if you can
Totally.
manage recreational stuff, obviously you can sell real estate.
Naturally.
Yeah. So no, I actually went to university thinking I'd run summer camps and outdoor centers, and that was
Cool.
going to be what I do for my career.
All right.
And got out of school, immediately got a job doing exactly that back here in Vancouver. Did that for about 10 years, a little bit with the Boys and Girls Clubs, and then with the YMCA of Greater Vancouver for another 8. And I loved it. But the challenge I found was that I spent a heck of a lot of time of my summers working, 16, 17, 18-hour days. And the YMCA is a not-for-profit. So the money
Mhm.
wasn't awesome. And I mean,
Mhm.
to this day, I still very much believe in the mission vision of the YMCA, and I'm a big fan of what they continue to do. But in the city of Vancouver, where life is really expensive,
Oh my
you,
goodness. I read the headlines.
yeah, exactly.
It's bananas.
I'm under contract with a client right now in a 2 bedroom for over $1 million, and it's only about 1,000 square feet. And
Dear
it's not
Lord,
even
that
in a
is
particularly
bananas.
clean part of town. So yeah, yeah. I needed to make a shift that allowed me to make more money, as cold and hard as it is. My dad's a lawyer, has been a lawyer for 35, 40 years, something like that. My
Mhm.
grandpa was a lawyer, my uncle was a lawyer.
But you didn't want to
Um,
be a lawyer.
no, no, it was one of the two things on the table. So I asked my dad, and he said,
Okay.
"Oh yeah, no, you should definitely go back, get your law degree. You can come work here." And then I asked Keith, who's my best friend from high school, who had been a realtor about 3 or 4 years at that point. I said, "I'm thinking real estate or law." He said, "Oh no, law is definitely the place to go." So I ignored them both and went and got my license
That is
and
hilarious.
haven't looked back ever since. So there you go.
You know what you
That's
shouldn't do, Greg? Go into real estate.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna go into real estate.
Well, so I was listening to something in the last couple of weeks actually talking about this whole concept of being an entrepreneur, and everybody thinks that everybody should be an entrepreneur. And the
Not
point that the
everybody
person
should be
will,
an entrepreneur. It's terrible advice.
right. I actually think the people who should be the entrepreneurs are the ones who are ready to get knocked down a bunch of times. And
Oh, totally agree. Kicked in the face multiple times, stand back up. That's entrepreneurship.
that's what
It's
it
awful,
takes.
but I love it.
And,
It's
and
addicting.
on some level, I think maybe the first evidence I have in my life of being particularly entrepreneurial was when I said to Keith, "That's great. I still want to go do this." It's
Yeah.
kind of taking the opposite tact on the whole thing, right? So,
I
yeah.
love that. That is really good advice and stuff that I think more people just need to like hear that as well, because I think the popular opinion is you do it, everybody's doing it, it's cool, but it's hard. It is challenging and you wear a lot of hats.
Yeah. And I think if you hear that message and you're like, well, screw you, I'm going to do it anyway, then you're
Hmm.
probably the right person. And if you
Hmm.
hear that at your message and you're like, well, I think I can probably do it. Maybe it'll work. I'm
Yeah.
just not sure it's going to go as well as you hope it's going to go.
And especially real estate is a whole different beast.
Oh, it's a
It's
beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
and you've been doing it now for some time, so you haven't been deterred
No,
over the years. So like that's a good thing. You obviously clearly like it.
what I really like the most about it, honestly, is the ability to understand people and to chat with them and understand what they're trying to do and to help them solve
Hmm.
that problem. The problem solving with the creativity piece of it, where you can layer those things
Hmm.
together and bring in the expertise that you have to that equation.
Yes.
I think that's the cool part.
So what
So
did your dad and Keith think when you came to them? You're like, great advice, guys. but
I'm
I'm gonna
ignoring you
do
both.
real estate.
Yeah, and I think everybody in my life was a little skeptical. The stats on becoming a realtor aren't awesome.
They're like negative.
Yeah, like first washout in the first 2 years is 50% and five is 95 or
I
something like
know. I was
that.
being
So,
extra sarcastic. Like success rate is like negative 10%.
mhm.
Like it
Yeah, yeah,
takes like more unsuccessful people than successful people to be successful. That
totally.
makes
But
sense.
it's yeah, yeah, no, no, exactly. But I
If
think
you're
it's
following that math, if it's mathing.
that's real estate math right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How the heck did Really Trusted come to be? You go to school for nothing to do with business, entrepreneurship. You ignore all advice and decide to be a
Yep.
realtor. What was the first, like, I might be onto something?
The first thing was actually we in BC, we lost control of the real estate council about 5.5, 6 years ago. The government took it back and became our regulator for a bunch of probably good reasons in hindsight. Um, they imposed on us a whole bunch of new disclosure forms. And
Oh,
actually, what Really
yes.
Trusted was for me was just a
Mhm.
desire to like make those forms easier because I saw them as a
Mhm.
bunch of pain points in my business that I just didn't want to solve. And my brother, who's our CTO still, I went to him at the time and I said, look, like I want to solve this. Can you just
Mhm.
like whip something up for me? He's like,
Just
this
with
isn't
some.
a whip something up kind of a deal. Like this is going to take me some time.
Yeah.
If I do this, you've got to agree to go sell this to some other people to make it worth my time. I was like, all right, sure, why not? Truly, it's just kind of picked up steam from there. The first iteration was literally just disclosure forms, but there was enough value in what we were doing that a handful of brokerages saw
Picked it
value in
up.
it, picked
Yeah.
it up, took it on as a subscription, and then we then kind of started to see early revenue. And we're like, okay, well, what else could we do? Within about 6 months, we had shifted our attention to FinTrack because
A beast.
it was a beast. It's still, I mean, it's still a beast
Oh
for some.
God. The new forms that they just added and questions, I was just like, that is silly. Anyways, carry on.
Mm. Oh, don't get me started on that. I've literally hosted entire webinars on that topic.
Oh
So,
dear Lord, we could, you know what? We're gonna side that
all right.
conversation for our
Sounds good.
rants because I think it'll be good.
Yeah, all right.
Anyways.
So we shifted into FinTrack and realized that there was so much need in the sector for help on FinTrack. I mean,
Mhm.
the forms are part of the solution in my mind and part of where we've been able to offer a lot of value. And that's something we do and we've done a lot of for years. We layered in the remote verification piece back in April of 2020 because we saw realtors really needed something at that point for that.
Was that
Mm,
COVID? Was that the
yeah,
start of COVID?
it
I
was a month
blocked
after
it all
COVID.
out. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Month after COVID. FinTrack had released guidance back in October of 2019 around how you might choose to do virtual identification or remote verification. And on our team, we kind of looked at it. We're like, yeah, that's interesting. We'll do that at some point. But we just kind of moved it aside. We were working on other things. And then March, whatever, 13th, 14th, whatever day the world shut down, we said, wait a minute. This now is going to be very important in this next few years, I think.
Oh
And so
gosh, you hit the nail on the head there, hey?
yeah, we just kind of turned our attention full blast to getting that out the door because we saw that there was going to be just a tremendous need for it.
That is awesome. And it's so cool that initially
Mhm.
you were solving your own pain point, which is a value for you, but I totally could hear where your brother's coming from. And then you sort of started locally, like with local
Yep.
branches. And then it seems to be snowballing. Like we use your services here in Alberta and in the region in BC that I also work. So are you across Canada now?
We're across Canada. We have about 500 some odd brokerages on the system. We've also developed a whole bunch of complementary products that are really helpful for the brokerages. And I think a year ago, we launched a FinTrack specific online training platform. And then about 5 months ago, we launched a manuals creation process, which doesn't mean much to your typical agent. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're running a brokerage somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
your pain on FinTrack is, I can guarantee you, worse than it is for a realtor. And where a
Oh
lot of the
gosh,
pain
yes.
is around the creation of what I call the foundational documents to a FinTrack compliance program. So that,
Mm-hmm.
the brokerage's risk assessment, the policy manual, the procedure manuals. So
Mm-hmm.
we started offering a way to do that about 5 or 6 months ago. We now are the only ones in Canada that I know of who offer a truly like full service compliance solution for a Canadian real estate brokerage. So brokerages
Mm-hmm.
who have signed up for FinTrack Express, we're going to come in, we're going to create the compliance program, we're going to maintain that compliance program. We're going to get all their agents on the app. We're going to get all their agents doing their training through our Academy platform. We're going to do the effectiveness review for them with a partnership we've developed. So
Oh,
their
great.
compliance program is just completely managed. And
Which is
what we're
great
here
because they get audited on that, I believe, right?
substantially, yeah.
Yeah,
And
and there's fines, like hefty fines for
hefty fines.
non-compliance.
You've read up on this topic, so yes,
Well,
yes, yes.
a risk background.
There you
Looking there
go.
for you.
This is that old risk background coming in.
I
Exactly.
brush it off every now and then,
I like it. I like it.
What has the uptick been on that, or have you just sort of started socializing that now to other
No, it's been
brokerages?
very, very strong. We've,
Hmm.
oh, well, it's been strong enough that we've added a couple people to our team to kind of make sure that we can
Ah,
deliver the service levels that we want to be delivering on that. It relates to the problem that, again, I'm not sure agents are as aware of it, but certainly broker owners across the country are very much seeing it. And you know what? That's not fair, actually. Agents are also seeing that the increased compliance burden,
oh
the
dear Lord,
regulatory
yes.
burden that we're all feeling, right? Like
Yes.
when
Yes,
I
yes.
started in real estate, our contracts were, I think they were 4 pages. The deal I have under contract right now is a 19-page contract.
You almost need a PhD.
It's just a lot. And it's
It
a
is
lot of,
crazy.
if we talk about BC, how that's evolved, it was the loss of dual agency, it was the disclosure forms, it was the
Hmm.
rescission period, it was the foreign buyer tax. We go to Ontario, you layer in Treza as their most recent example, where they've
I'm not
gone to
familiar with Treza. What's Treza?
basically it's designated agency is what they've
Got
moved.
you.
Like I'm not super read up on
No,
it.
no. I
I'm not
mean,
an Ontario agent. They've kind of done exactly what we did with the new disclosure forms here, that what we call in BC the DORT. They
hmm.
have, I don't know what they call it, but it's like a 12 or 15-page PDF guide.
Oh
And you're
my
supposed to present it at the
gosh.
front of things. And consumers are like, what the heck is this garbage?
Okay, don't you find that so silly? Sometimes I feel like I'm asking somebody to marry me and we haven't even gone on a date.
I
I
had some concerns about
understand
it
it
front.
to a degree,
Yeah,
but like part of me is like, holy moly, it seems intimate.
it does. The pushback I would have, and this is an ongoing
Hmm.
conversation I have with people all the time, and I don't I
Hmm.
don't have like a strong point of view on the whole thing, but if we look at what's happening down south right now with NAR
Oh.
and the buyer stuff, agents who have figured out how to have these kinds of conversations early are going to be okay.
Hmm.
Because if you're comfortable having that conversation around what your fiduciary obligations are to your client early,
Hmm.
you're going to show up as the professional that you want to be. And then it's
Yes.
not unusual for people to pay professionals. And if you
Yes.
show up and you're like, well, do you want to see this house? And your whole presence is just unlocking the door, you're not really a professional because most
Hmm.
people know how to unlock a door, it turns out. So
Maybe.
maybe, not always, but maybe. So
That's a really good point. So it sounds like you have done several iterations from, initial concept to today.
oh,
Is that
I
right?
really trust it. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's not even close to what it was at the beginning. And some of that's been my own learnings and development as we've gone, and some of it's
Mhm.
just responding to needs in the sector. I mean, at this point, we've now are able to develop a full compliance solution where if your view of FinTrack is that you're filling in forms, you're actually like missing probably 3/4 of the regs on this point. Like the forms are important, but that's not the whole thing. In fact, that's not most of
Yeah.
the thing.
You went from seriously solving your pain point to creating a whole compliance solution for brokerages. So that is really cool. So did you start out as a website and then where was your starting point? And I assume your brother has some sort of development experience.
Background, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. This is
He's
what he's always done his whole life.
yeah, okay.
This is now his full-time thing, but for years he had been kind of dabbling in a bunch of other things. Originally, we were just on a mobile site, and every now and then, not very often, but every now and then, I still get people who will contact our support desk or who I'll be talking to who say it just doesn't work the way I think it should. And it's because they've bookmarked the mobile version of the site from pre-app days.
Oh my gosh, no way. That's funny.
Yeah, yeah. So
You're
like
like,
this
lose the
happened.
bookmark.
Yeah, this happened to me last week. The gentleman had put a bookmark of our mobile site on his phone probably 5 years ago because we released an actual app in the app stores probably 4 years ago.
Oh my goodness. So that
Uh,
was pretty quick after.
yeah, we saw a need pretty early on. What we
Mhm.
found was that agents were struggling to understand how to bookmark a mobile site and just didn't see it as an
I
app as a result.
I'm sorry,
So
like the hilarity of that is just very funny, but I could see that.
yeah, the cool thing about the real estate industry, and I've always appreciated this, we were talking a little bit about how entrepreneurship is tough and how not everybody should become a realtor and all the rest. But what I do think is really neat about the real estate sector is that anybody can become a realtor
Hmm.
and that there's a client for everybody in it. Like,
Hmm.
I'm probably not a good fit for somebody who's like super artistic out there, spacey,
Hmm.
because I'm a pretty data driven kind of a realtor. Like, look, I can serve that person and
Of course.
I'll probably do a decent job of it, but they're not naturally going to be like
Hmm.
drawn to me because
Yeah.
I'm going to come with all of this data and they're going to look at this data and be like,
Like,
I don't care
please,
about
whatever
these
you
numbers.
do, don't
Why are
pass
you
me
doing
that. Yeah,
that? Yeah.
exactly.
What is all of this relevant for? This space feels nice. And when somebody
Hmm.
says that to me, I'm like, okay, I
You're like,
don't
I
think
have
I
somebody on my
understand.
team that might be a better fit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know, but yeah, like that's what I like about real estate. But the downside of that, or where I've seen that most acutely running a tech company that serves realtors, is that everybody comes with a different level of abilities on the tech side of things. So I
Indeed.
have a
Indeed.
full-time support desk that deals with all sorts of questions. How
Are
do
they
like
24/7?
no, we're like business hours.
Yeah.
We might expand our hours at some point. I'll tell you, anybody who's hit our support desk is going to get a better response time than any of the other providers of other real estate tech out there that I'm not going to name because I don't want to make enemies, but the bar's not high. Let me put it that way.
What's been like one of the funniest things that have come through the help desk? Do you have one that you're like, oh my gosh, the bookmark maybe?
The bookmark's not bad. We've had people who couldn't figure out how to download an app in the App Store, and we literally had to talk them through putting in their iCloud password. I'll occasionally get like hate mail.
Oh my
The
gosh, why?
people really dislike FinTrack, don't you know?
I do know, but it's not like you were bored one day and you're like, you know what, this country needs FinTrack. Like
I
it's not
know,
you.
I know. I'm actually just trying to make it easier for them is the sad thing about the whole thing. But
Yeah, it's a government mandated.
because we serve in the FinTrack space,
Hmm.
people associate it and therefore, whatever. I don't know. I don't take too
Yeah.
much of it personally anymore.
Do you spend the majority of your time at the really trusted office doing really trusted stuff?
Yeah, I'm probably like 50-50 at this point.
Okay.
Really depends on the seasonality of the whole thing. For the last 2 months, it's been pretty full on. Korea released those new forms, and that created a whole bunch of discussions around why and what and all the rest.
Oh gosh.
It's meant that my time's been sucked a lot into really trusted. But throughout that, I've gone out and shown some real estate here and there as well, and sold a
Yeah.
couple of houses along the way as well. So
Well, I mean, which is never a bad thing.
no, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What do you think has been like one of the key factors to growing really trusted from, the website to where you started to kind of where you are today?
I actually have a really precise answer to that question. And it's because I was talking about it an hour ago with one of our new team members. And it's highlighted in our core values, which I'm looking to over there on the wall. None of
Mhm.
your listeners will see me pointing, but I'm pointing to
We'll
them
link
where we
them
have
if
them.
they're on
There you
somewhere
go.
on the
There
net.
you go. I think they're on our website actually.
Okay, there we go. I'll link
Uh,
those then.
we've taken the view that being customer centric is really important, but doing that from a place of thoughtful leadership. And our other core values are also important, and I can talk about those in a second. But the thoughtful leadership is something that's been a theme for us where we've made decisions that aren't always the best for the company, but are what I believe to be the right ones for the industry or for the client
Mhm.
ultimately. One of those examples is that our remote verification feature
I
is
love that
something,
one.
it's great, right? We had it out in April of 2020, long before anybody else had one targeted for the real estate sector. But we've always made it only available to our brokerage customers. And the
Mm.
reason we do that is because in the FinTrack regs, it quite clearly says that if you are going to accept government ID remotely,
Mhm.
your compliance program, your policy manuals need to specify how you're going to go about doing that.
Mhm.
And my fear was that an agent would sign on to our platform, use the remote verification feature without that being documented in their compliance program, and would
Mhm.
therefore put themselves in their brokerage offside of FinTrack's regs.
Yeah,
Now, it would have been a heck of a lot easier for me to put that out there and
totally.
advertise the crap out of it and have all sorts of individual agents on the platform. And in fact, when I talk about hate mail, one of the things that happens
Back
every
to the
few
hate mail.
months,
Oh
yeah.
no.
Well, every few months, somebody will
Yeah.
sign on and buy an individual subscription and then send a nasty email 20 minutes later. Hey, where's the remote FinTrack? That's the only reason I bought this. And every time we have to say, look, like, here's your refund, first of all, customer centric. Our other two values are integrity and
Mhm.
value. It would be opposed to all of those if we tried to keep that money. That would be insane. So here's your money, and this is why we do that. And my support desk goes through the look. This is why we've sandboxed off that feature. We really believe strongly in the value of it, but we want to make sure that your compliance officer is aware of it before you
Yeah.
use it because we don't want to put you offside of FinTrack's regs. They carry a big stick, as
Mm.
you've made reference to earlier. That's just one of the ways I think we're very
Yeah.
careful about what the decisions we've made. And sometimes that goes against our own best interests, I suppose.
And it's so interesting because compliance is a steep hill. Like there's a lot of stuff out there. And does Really Trusted need to deal with like PIPEDA and all of those type of regulations as well? Or do they intersect at all? Or how have you been able to navigate those sort of compliance or privacy potential roadblocks or issues?
Yeah, no, it's something we definitely have to contemplate in all of the decisions, particularly when it comes around the personal information side of what we're doing. Like
Hmm.
we probably have hundreds of people's IDs right now on the system. We're processing hundreds of them a day at this point. So, in fact, for us to not have hundreds of them will be weird. It might be in the thousands at this point right now.
Yeah.
But one of the decisions we had to make early on was how long is that data available to agents? There's a clear need for them to have access to the data,
Hmm.
but we also don't want to expose ourselves or them to the long-term risks involved in keeping that
A
data for too long.
1000%. Yeah.
Kind of a funny story on that one, actually. On my real estate team, one of my colleagues was using the remote verification feature and got the email back and was busy and waited about 5 or 6 weeks and then went back to the email
Oh
and clicked
no.
accept, and it's not available. We only keep it available for 30 days. And that was one of those decisions to deal with the privacy concerns. We just kind of had to
Yes,
set an appropriate amount of time.
of
So,
course.
so he said, Greg, what's wrong here? I was like, well, you waited too long. Oh, all right.
Yes.
And he's like, is there anything you can do? I was like, no, it's gone. Like, I can't
Yeah.
solve this for you. This is just like the data is not there. Like,
It's
so
literally doesn't exist anymore.
yeah, yeah. So
Oh, that's kind of funny. And he was probably like, but don't you know somebody? Aren't you that somebody?
yeah, yeah. If you can't solve this, you're gonna have to go back to your client, man. That's how this goes
Oh,
here. So
and that's so embarrassing.
I mean, not the end of the world.
I would be embarrassed, but I mean, I
I
get
don't
embarrassed easy.
I don't get that. One of the pushbacks I have against realtors who don't want to do FinTrack
Mhm.
is that when you walk into a bank and you open up an account, you don't
Yes.
think anything of them asking you for ID.
100%. It's not asking them, it's asking them a second time because I forgot to hit
Yeah,
accept.
okay, I can sort of see
To
that
be
part. All
clear,
right. All
I
right,
don't
all
mind
right.
asking them. It's if I forgot to hit the
Uh,
accept and do the other steps.
yeah,
What do you think lies next for Really Trusted?
that's a good question. I think we're really busy right now with the FinTrack Express stuff. So this all-in-one solution has really been valuable to the sector. We're seeing the traction, the market pull on that. My calendar is jam-packed with conversations around getting that into their brokerage. Our current focus is really nailing down the delivery of that in a way that continues to be to the level of service that I want it to be. It is entirely likely possible that our next shift will be delivering a similar kind of experience for some other sector. Um,
Cool.
yeah, we're
Like
contemplating.
cars or, I'm just thinking of other things where you might need FinTrack.
So the FinTrack regulated stuff, well, I mean, the diamonds and jewelry business is one of
Hmm.
them. There's a lot of small money service businesses. So there's some possible opportunities there. We're contemplating that. Mortgage
Cool.
brokers are going to be subject to FinTrack come October. So that might be an interesting one
Oh,
as well.
interesting.
Yeah.
I missed that little.
Yeah. So I think that's an obvious one as well. So we'll see. We're going to kind of go down the path and explore what we can do.
And everything's coast to coast at this point, right? Like all of your offerings are coast to coast in Canada. PEI all
Almost.
the way. Okay.
I hesitate because we really haven't done any of the work to get into Quebec. We don't have
Oh,
particular
that's
French language
fair.
support. It's something we'd like to do, but I'm also
There's
concerned.
nuances there, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, and
different
that's
requirements.
yeah. All those contests where it's like
Yeah.
available for everywhere other than Quebec. There's a
Yeah.
reason they've done that, and so
Yeah.
we've been kind
That's
of
fair.
we've been really cautious around maybe we deal or don't enter that space. So I don't know,
Hmm.
maybe.
Yeah, TBD, who knows
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
How has it been? Because each province, holy cow, they operate so different. Like you even said, Toronto just came out with Treza or Tria
With
or
Treza,
whatever.
Treza, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
Tressa. I mean, I'm from PEIs, like I said, so I know like they're a little bit different than Alberta versus BC. So how have you guys been able to navigate and keep ahead of, well, I guess FinTrack's the same regardless, but I'm on your really trusted BC app. So I get
Mm.
access to the door and all those other.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I know it's not like that in Alberta, but any other province where you kind of have some added stuff?
No, at this point we haven't, and I get requests for that. That's how I know about Treza because a
Hmm.
handful of people have asked us to do some work on that side of things, and that's something else we might expand to, I guess, is what I
Hmm.
would say. But in terms of navigating it, it hasn't been particularly complicated because
FinTrack's the
we've
same across the board.
Well, it is, and we take the view that we want to be your partners in making sure your program's compliant. And we do offer the CREA forms. They are available to brokerages on our platform, but I'm making up a stat here. Let's
No,
call it
no, that's okay.
98%, but maybe it's 95%. I don't know, somewhere
Greg
around there.
says.
Yeah, yeah,
Stat
yeah.
followed by Greg says.
You can quote me on this. No.
Yeah, yeah.
Something between 95 to 98% of our brokerages are using our version of the forms, the ones we developed 3 years
Mhm.
ago, to address the same problem that CREA saw 6 months ago here. My point on that is I think once you take the lens that you're able to provide value, the province doesn't matter because you're just providing the thoughts, the guidance, the advice, whatever around FinTrack itself. It doesn't matter that
Totally.
Aurea has one form and Preb has one form and your brokerage might have a different form or whatever. This is our form. We think you
Mhm.
should just use this one instead of whatever else you were doing, kind of thing. And you
Yeah,
don't have to, but that's the bottom line on
I
that.
like
Yeah.
that. Also, I want to touch on before I forget. I want to hear about your podcast. Tell us a little bit
Oh,
about the
yeah.
podcast.
The True North Compliance Podcast.
Okay.
So it's a Canadian compliance podcast. We've partnered to do this, and we're going to talk with compliance experts across the country,
I love it.
probably initially primarily in real estate, just because that's where we spend a lot of our time, but I'm
Mhm.
not particularly stuck on that. One of our guests will be David Vijan from Outlier Compliance Group. They're an anti-money laundering shop out of Toronto. And so he's got a really broad view of FinTrack in all sorts of different sectors about, MSBs, virtual currency, that kind of stuff.
Mm.
So pretty cool to see that. Yeah, so we've got some kind of an interesting panel of guests. If you're really into like geeking out on some compliance stuff,
I
that's the podcast
mean,
for you. No, the risk element might work for you.
exactly.
Yeah,
I'm like, you know
come
your audience really well.
come on over. It's
I
funny
love
because
that.
I hesitated for a long time about whether anybody would actually listen to the thing because compliance doesn't have like the best of, but
It's not the sexiest thing on the street for sure,
right, yeah,
but
yeah,
you like need it.
yeah,
There's
and
no
I
like
think
skirting around it. So
no,
like it's better to know enough to get
and what
by.
I've realized is that the people who are into it are like really like
Hardcore.
into it, right? Like really want
Mm-hmm.
to delve into the details, the nuance, the implications, the whole thing.
Oh,
So
and then debate.
yeah, totally.
I
Yeah,
like it.
yeah.
I'm that geek. I like it. I'll
Mhm.
have to tune in. And
Perfect.
I
Yeah.
presume you're on Spotify and Apple or will be or
Yeah, I hope so. I think so. I'm not even sure.
who did you guys partner with for that? It was another
Uh,
compliance group, you
it's
said,
another
right?
compliance group. Yeah, it's a company out of Victoria. They haven't done a ton of work on compliance just yet, but they're working on a compliance solution, I believe, as well for the BCFSA stuff. I generally like kind of who they are and in all the decisions I've ever made around business and life and stuff. The heart of people is where I try to make my decisions, I guess, is
Mm-hmm.
how I look at it. They're called Radar Hill. One of the cool things that they've done before, years ago, they had created for the Victoria Real Estate Board a like strata documents sharing platform, which is a great idea and something that
Mm-hmm.
in BC people call for all the time. In fact, there's a couple of guys who have a startup here doing that very thing.
Eli?
No,
No.
stratadocuments.com. Eli
Oh,
Report
okay.
will analyze your reports for you, or will
Yeah.
analyze the strata docs for you.
Mm-hmm.
But the pain point that the Victoria's Real Estate Board's solution, and Victoria owns that solution, and stratadocuments.com is trying to solve is the gathering of the documents in the first place. You take a listing,
Oh
and the
gosh.
property management companies rake you over the coals in fees, particularly if
Can
you want
we
them more than
talk
3 weeks
about
from now.
that? That is
Yeah,
bananas.
yeah,
And the best thing is like you have access to them. But if I ask for it for tomorrow, it's like an extra $200. Are you kidding me right now? Like
yeah. And then
it
they're
is
charging
highway
you
robbery.
35
Robbery.
cents a page or something, even though it's all electronic anyway. Like the
I
whole thing
know.
is crazy.
Yeah,
Um,
agreed.
yeah, so Radar Hill had solved that problem on behalf of like Victoria Real
Hmm.
Estate Board had paid them to do this project years ago.
Hmm.
And I really liked that story. And so,
Yeah, that's cool. Well, I mean, they're also doing something kind of like solving real pain points that people are experiencing. So I can see how that would
yeah,
hit home.
yeah, totally. Yeah.
Do you ever collaborate or chat to any sort of compliance counterparts south of the border?
No, we haven't done any work there at all. I'd
Hmm.
be open to it. I think probably primarily for the conversation. I don't think we see ourselves expanding south of the border anytime
Hmm.
soon, if ever. It's just such a different framework and such a different everything, right?
Different
So,
beast for sure.
yeah. Yeah. Are you familiar with a lot of compliance stuff down there?
No,
Oh, okay. All right.
not at all. Like I just ask enough questions to like be a
Mm.
bit dangerous, you know?
Yeah, yeah. No, sorry. I got nothing on that one.
I love asking people, and this is a bit of a selfish question.
Okay.
But if you could give one book recommendation or one training that you're like, wow, I
Hmm.
love this, or I would do this again, or this is my favorite read, what would it be?
Can I take a couple, maybe? I don't
Yes.
know. Probably the one that has had the most influence on my life is still the 5 a.m. Club. And I don't wake up at 5 a.m. every day, despite having read it and citing it as one of the most influential books. But some of the concepts there around like creating space for yourself to kind of think, um,
Yes.
and kind of allowing yourself or forcing yourself, whatever, however you want to phrase that, to take the bigger view on issues. The other one that I'm actually just listening to, and this is a bit more like current, I guess, is Come Up for Air. It's the framework around business practices that allow you the space within your business to
Mhm.
come up for air. I'm only halfway through it, but I like the beginning of it so far. So I'll
Okay,
keep going.
that's one I'm gonna add because we both have kids. We're
Mm,
both entrepreneurs. Both are attempting real estate and having a life and doing all this stuff. And it's like sometimes it's good. I heard what's it called? The CEO Minute by Sharon Shrivastas. I think
okay.
that's right. It's a podcast anyway. And one of the things that he mentioned in the top habits of successful millionaires or something like that, I think is one of them was do not do lists. He
Mm,
writes out do not do this like on your
that's
day
fair.
or in your week and doing like an audit of your tasks and stuff. And you're like, don't do that because you're supposed to be focused over here. And if you're doing all these other things that you're not supposed to do. So it kind of sounds the same.
I think it's part of the same line of thinking for sure. I mean, honestly, I actually believe that there's growth in just anything. Like if you're
Mhm.
not listening to a podcast or an audio book or something while you're driving, I mean, look, I don't always every day. Sometimes you just need to take a mental break, and that's
Yeah,
totally
of
fair.
course. Yeah.
But I really try and listen to some stuff like that all the time because I think there's even in just random topics, you're going to pick up something that you just never know where it might
Yes,
be
little
applicable to your
nuggets.
life.
Hey,
Yeah.
like you may
Yeah.
not digest and get all of it, but if you can walk away with just a little nugget, like that's a win. Because
Yeah.
what's the alternative? Staying the same.
Yeah. And I guess from a like current news point of view, I've kind of become a religious listener to the All In podcast. I don't know if
Oh, I don't know that one.
it's for venture capital entrepreneur kind of guys who have
Hmm.
all like done remarkably well in their lives. One's like a early Facebook engineer. A couple of them were like early PayPal mafia
Okay.
guys.
Yeah.
Like they're comfortably well off at this point. Let me put it
Hmm.
that way.
Hmm.
But they do a pretty deep analysis of stories that are important, I think, anyhow. It's kind of a fun one because they go through like a level of detail that you don't see like regular media going through necessarily, which I think
Hmm.
is both a shame and why I think it's useful to listen to people like that.
Of
So,
course, it's probably
yeah.
so refreshing, especially in this tech space that you're in and perhaps growing and doing all these things. It's nice to hear different ways of thinking, especially from potential maybe funders down the road of questions they might be asking or whatever.
There's other good podcasts for that, but I think it's
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
what I've actually learned the most from them is how important it is to like go to the source and really understand, not take the headline, not even read the article, go read the study that the article was written from. Like get some opinions based on your actual own knowledge. And if
What?
you
Critical
just,
thinking? Stop
I know,
it. Get
crazy,
out of
right?
here.
Because so much of our society like reads the headlines and moves on and just assumes that that's the truth and never thinks beyond that. And I think that's a real problem. So
That is so freaking accurate.
yeah,
It's sad.
it's
It's
very
one of
sad.
those
Yeah,
things that I'm trying to teach my kids is like,
yeah, me too.
even some of their little silly questions, I'm like, well, did you think about that? Did you look for that? Or did you just come and because mommy will give you the answer, you know? And I'm
Yeah,
just like, I'll tell you what, my parents did not give me the answer always, nor did they have access
no,
to all the information. So gotta
yeah,
learn.
and it's so much easier now. Like
Oh
there's
my
literally a device that
gosh.
we carry around that has all of the world's knowledge
I
in your palm.
know.
So
Do you remember encyclopedias, like the real
yeah,
encyclopedias,
totally. Yeah,
and
yeah,
doing book reports and stuff using and citing? And now there's
absolutely.
so much AI stuff, and I'm just like, it's too much. Do they still make encyclopedias? Like, I don't even know.
I have no idea about that, but I
I'll be
know.
Googling after this.
There you go.
See?
My daughter puts together presentations with a whole bunch of data points that are
Yeah.
easily accessible at her fingertips because she just goes and Googles it now and goes on
Yeah.
Wikipedia and all the rest. So yeah, no,
It's
it's
so wild.
yeah,
Who knows
yeah,
what
it's
it'll
crazy.
look like when they're our age?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. Particularly with this AI stuff that's starting to change and starting to be influential and actually like might have an actual use case sometime soon. So yeah,
Yeah, I guess we'll see.
yeah,
TBD.
yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Greg. Honestly, this has been for a risk geek like myself, very enlightening and entertaining. And I can't wait to see and dig into a little bit more of what you guys have coming up in the future.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciated the chat. It's been a lot of fun.